Well, it's been a volatile across Asia-Pacific markets as the U.S. election results prove far closer than expected. Asian stocks, well, they closed mostly up, but that was mostly before Mr. Trump indicated that he might dispute the result. Well, Tokyo, those gains is closed up by more than 1.5%. Those gains were capped as worries of a contested election weighed on sentiment. Mainland markets also were up. Investors are getting some comfort in recovery in China's services sector. But tech giant Alibaba, that sank more than 7.5% after China's shock decision to suspend its IPO just 48 hours before its debut. Well, to help make sense of these market movements, we've got Curtis Chin. He is speaking to us right now. Curtis, well, the results, too close to call. So will a Trump or Biden win spell better prospects for Asia?
Well, you got to keep in mind, Asia is so diverse. I think even as we saw with the returns you were noting from the Nikkei, at one point the Nikkei was up nearly 2%, early on reflecting the belief that there might be what they call a blue wave, that former Vice President Biden might win. But as the night went on and as we've seen, there's tremendous uncertainty in the markets these days because of the uncertainty here in the U.S. Here I'm right outside Washington. I don't know if you can see, but today's headline was really about a nation divided. And that's one thing that investors don't want, the uncertainty that plays out. So clearly, whoever wins this election, some industries will benefit more than others. There was an initial interest in how well renewables would do, with the hope at that point that a former Vice President Biden would be the next president.
Yeah, and you said that's something that investors don't want to see. So, as we've seen, the gap is much closer than what we thought. And how should investors view this? What do you think is going to be the next step for them?
Well, 2020 continues to be a crazy and uncertain year. And so people need to factor in, almost either scenario at this time. And that's the challenge. In many ways, it may well be a wait and see. Let us all hope that the wait and see isn't weeks and it becomes an election month, but simply election days or an election week. But clearly, we're going to have to pay close attention, not just to the presidential race, but what happens with the U.S. Senate. At night's end here, let's say 3 a.m. when I went to sleep, the Republicans seem to have a greater chance of holding on to the Senate, which would suggest, again, that if there were a president of the same party, maybe things would be done more easily. But if it becomes a divided government, meaning a Democratic president, a Republican Senate, that might well put a damper on some of the bigger initiatives that former Vice President Biden was suggesting during his campaign.
Yeah, and wait and see indeed. But I want to get your personal take. How concerned are you?
How concerned am I about what? The uncertainty?
Definitely, because it could take days or even weeks for all we know.
I've been on CNN so often, people know me as Mr. Optimist, and clearly I have confidence in our U.S. system of checks and balances. We'll see if that confidence is misplaced. But I'd also say to people, don't bet against the United States, particularly for those long-term investors. Clearly, at times of uncertainty, some investors will do very well, taking advantage of the ups and downs in markets. But if you think about long-term investment, we think about the U.S. relative to other economies and what's going on in this world. Clearly, the U.S. remains a key place to attract foreign investment into the United States. That will only continue. The other thing I would just note, particularly to your viewers in Singapore, is that no matter who is president, the U.S. and Singapore relation will continue to be a strong one. Singapore and the United States really had the first U.S.-Asia free trade agreement. And I think that's a shared interest and focus on free trade, that interchange between businesses, innovation, ideas will continue whoever is president next year.